Hello everyone, so this video is going to be a bit different to usual. This is going to be one of the only videos where I will go properly in depth talking about spoilers about a specific movie, and today it's going to be Avengers Infinity War. I said I was going to do this in my spoiler-free review, and well, here it is. And I thought now is the best time to do it because the movie's been out for pretty much the best bit of a week, maybe a bit more than a week by now, so I hope most of you have seen the movie by now, and this is going to be your one and only warning. If you have not seen Infinity War yet, please go and see it before seeing this video, because this video is going to contain a shit ton of spoilers, and I'm going to talk about the heaviest hitting bits in the movie. I'm not going to talk about every single thing that happens because I'll be here for ages. I'm just going to talk about the bits that affected me the most and the bits that left an impact on me the most in the movie. But like I said, it's in the title of the video, it's in the thumbnail, I've said it once already, this video is going to be full of spoilers, so if you haven't seen the movie, you have been warned. So the first thing that I want to talk about is go a bit more in detail about certain things that I was really vague about in my spoiler-free review. And one of those things is that I mentioned quite a few times that within the first 5 minutes of the movie, I immediately knew what the tone of the movie was going to be, and that it was going to be completely different to anything we had really seen before in the MCU. And what I mean by that is, if you've seen Thor Ragnarok, you will know that Asgard is destroyed and all of its residents are on this ship, just floating out in the middle of space. But one of the post-credit scenes to Thor Ragnarok was Thanos' ship just showing up in front of the Asgardian ship. Now, this is one thing I've said to a lot of my friends who haven't seen Infinity War yet, and I say to all of them, you have to have seen Thor Ragnarok before you see Infinity War, because otherwise the beginning of Infinity War won't make sense, as the beginning of Infinity War takes place almost instantly after that post-credit scene at the end of Thor Ragnarok. And I'm not talking like, you know, again, vaguely, I literally mean it takes place instantly after Thor Ragnarok finishes, because the movie starts and you have the Marvel logo and it already seems a bit somber than usual because you have this Asgardian distress signal playing over the Marvel logo instead of the usual fanfare that you get in a Marvel movie. And then you just see a ton of dead Asgardians, and Thanos is basically cleaning house. He's killing everyone in his sight. And the thing, more specifically, that I meant that happens in the first 5 minutes that kind of set the tone and the mood of the film for me, is when Heimdall and Loki die. This came as a bit of a shock to me, and to be honest, the majority of the deaths, except a few that I'll get on about in a minute, but the majority of the main deaths that happen in this movie, I didn't find that upsetting, but if anything, I found them more shocking. And probably the most shocking one was Loki at the start, because Heimdall, the movie starts, you have Thor trying to take down Thanos, and then you have Hulk really going into Thanos and beats the shit out of him, but then Thanos beats the shit out of Hulk, and that leads into another thing which I'll mention briefly in a minute. And then Loki tries to, you know, defend his brother, but then gets killed in the process, and it's a pretty brutal death, to be honest. All the deaths or any injuries that the main characters sustain throughout this movie are pretty intense, to say the least, because Thanos grabs Loki by the neck, chokes him to the point where his neck snaps, and you see almost all the colour run from his face, and his eyes look like they're about to pop out of their sockets, and it's pretty unpleasant. But before that, Heimdall gets stabbed in the chest and he's dead. And yeah, that's pretty much what set the tone for me for this whole movie. There are some, like I said in my spoiler-free review, there are some genuinely funny parts in this movie, but the majority of the movie's runtime is dedicated to a very somber, very hopeless feel, and I really like that about this movie. But yeah, the deaths in this movie that came as a shock to me rather than upsetting were the four main ones that happen earlier in the film, which are Loki, Heimdall, Gamora, and Vision. Loki and Heimdall, like I said, were shocking, especially Loki, because when you think about it, that's Loki who just died. I mean, yeah, the guy has been a pretty bad person in some of the previous films, but the way that he dies, trying to protect and redeem himself, trying to protect Thor anyway, just kind of, you know, makes him somewhat of a slightly better person, and then he's killed. And it just kind of makes his death even a bit more bittersweet in that sense. And then the next main person to die is Gamora, who, if you don't know, if you haven't seen the Guardians of the Galaxy films, is Thanos' adopted daughter. And she dies so that he can get the Soul Gem. And there's this whole section on a planet, which the name of the planet has completely escaped me, which I thought was really cool, because you don't just get a really emotional and powerful scene, you also get to see Red Skull for the first time since Captain America the First Avenger. And like I said in my review, there was one moment in the film that made me audibly go, oh shit, and it was that moment, because part of me kind of thought in the back of my head we had not seen the end of this character, and when it was confirmed that the Tesseract was the Space Stone, yeah, my theories were pretty much confirmed. And the fact that we now see him about, I don't know, 17 movies down the line since the first Captain America movie is pretty satisfying, and it kind of acts as some sort of closure to things that were established way early on in the MCU. But yeah, like I said, they go to this planet, Thanos and Gamora, to get the Soul Gem, and the only way he can get the Soul Gem is by sacrificing something he loves. And in that sense, he sacrifices Gamora. And to begin with, I thought, okay, there are quite a few times in movies where someone falls from a great height, and in this sense, she gets pushed off a cliff. Someone falls from a great height, you think they're dead, but in fact they're not dead. They manage to survive the fall by grabbing onto something. They don't do that. As soon as Gamora's gone over the edge, one of the next shots you see is her dead on the ground with a puddle of blood. And it's like, oh, I guess she's not coming back. She's properly dead. And the final major death that happens in the main runtime of the film is Vision, which is probably the only person I knew was going to die in this movie. Like through speculation before the movie came out or anything, I just knew in my head Vision had to die at some point, because the fucking Mind Stone is in his forehead, for crying out loud. There is no way Thanos can take that from him and not kill him. And I have to admit, I really liked the way that Vision was killed in this movie, especially seeing that I was just starting to really like the character. And what he does in the movie is really good, especially the stuff he has with Scarlet Witch. But the way they handle his death, I thought was really effective, because it's kind of established at like the middle point of the movie that Vision keeps saying that Scarlet Witch is the only one powerful enough to destroy the gem that's in his head, and that's the only way they can win over Thanos. And they're on Wakanda. People are dying, you know, the big battles happened, and Scarlet Witch is this close to destroying the mind gem that is in his head. And then Thanos turns up, and she then properly destroys the gem in Vision's head in a really powerful and emotional scene. Just before that, Thanos got the Time Stone. So what does he do? He quickly rewinds time to just before Vision dies, rips the Mind Stone from his forehead, and then shoves it in the Infinity Gauntlet. And, like, I don't always talk during cinema screenings. I almost never talk when I'm watching a film in a cinema. But there was one point when that happened, I was screaming in my head, just like, what a cunt. I apologise for the such strong language, but I was just like, oh, you are an absolute dick. And it's one of those very minor things where, like, you're so in the moment that you kind of forgot that he had just got the time gem. So when he turns back time, it's like, oh, you fucker. Oh, God. And to make it even worse, when Vision does die and he gets the thing ripped out of his head, all of the colour drains from him. And he goes, like, literally grey. From being, like, green and red to just plain grey. But like I said, those are the 4 main deaths in the film that shocked me. The bit that made me cry, probably the most in this entire movie, is right at the end. And you probably know what I'm about to say, because I've seen loads of things on the internet about this. Everyone seems to be talking about this one particular moment. And yeah, I think you know what I'm going to say. Right at the end of the movie, when Thanos has all of the gems, Thor comes along, shoves his axe, which he's just, acquired, into Thanos' chest. Thanos then says, "You should have aimed for the head," snaps his fingers, and the thing that was hinted at loads of times in the movie actually fucking happens. And the thing that was set up quite a few times in the movie is the fact that people keep saying all he needs to do, if he has all of the gems, all he needs to do is snap his fingers and half of humanity, or like half of life in the entire universe, is gone. And at the end of the movie, he snaps his fingers and literally half of everything disintegrates. And that includes half of the characters we've grown to love over these last 10 years. And I'm kind of going to go from memory here. If I miss someone out, then I apologise, but a lot of people go when this happens. You have Star-Lord, Drax, Mantis, they all disintegrate. Black Panther disintegrates. Bucky, Falcon, Scarlet Witch, yeah, they all disintegrate. But the worst one to go is Spider-Man. Because, obviously, thinking about it now after the film has come out, he's obviously going to come back, and so is Black Panther and the Guardians, because they all 3 of them have movies, scheduled to come out after Avengers 4. So you kind of know they're going to make it. But when Peter Parker goes, it's the single saddest moment I've seen in a movie probably since the end of Logan. Because Tom Holland really pushes his all into this one moment, and it was so sad. It reminded me of when David Tennant's Doctor regenerated at the end of his run in Doctor Who. And he's my favourite Doctor. And when he went, he just kept crying and just went, "I don't want to go." And Tom Holland does a very similar thing. He starts going like, "Oh, I don't feel so good, Mr. Stark." Then slumps over him and says, "I don't want to go," repeatedly, and then just disintegrates like the characters we've seen beforehand. And it's such a powerful scene. I cried my eyes out so much during that bit. But yeah, that was... I can understand why everyone's talking about it. Because, especially seeing that he's the youngest person in, this group of characters, seeing him go is just such a shock, especially seeing that he dies in the arms of Tony Stark, the person that kind of put him in this position in the first place. And the fact that his dying words are, "I am sorry," just make his death even more heart-wrenching. And I think that whole final bit of when all the characters disintegrate is just perfection. Because there's no music at all. It's just all silent when it happens, and you don't quite know how to process what is just happening, because everything has been pretty straightforward to make, your mind up on as it happens. You have these events there's a lot that happens, but it's pretty straightforward in terms of what needs to be processed. But as soon as people start disintegrating, you start thinking to yourself, oh shit, well, wait, what the fuck's going on? And then Peter Parker goes, and it just makes everything that whole much just worse. And obviously they are not the last characters to go in the film. In the post-credits scene, you have this very short scene with Maria Hill and Nick Fury. They both disintegrate as well. And just before Nick Fury disintegrates, he manages to send this message on what looks like a really, amped up pager. And it's to Captain Marvel, because you see her logo appear on the screen after he's sent the message. So, yeah, I think that's the best possible way they could have done a post-credit scene. If they had done anything else, I don't think it quite would have worked, but it'll be an interesting way to see how Captain Marvel will play into the events of Avengers 4. Which is one thing that I'm really excited about to see in not just her film, but also in Avengers 4, is just how she really ties into everything. Because her film takes place in the 90s. But she is supposed to be in Avengers 4, and it's obvious because of that post-credit scene that she will be. But I don't quite get how they're gonna, connect her into everything. Seeing that, like I said, her film takes place in the 90s. So where the fuck has she been for these last few years? Where has she been when the events of the first Avengers happened? When the events of the second Avengers happened? When all of these movies have happened? Where has she been? So hopefully they should explain that. And apparently, according to Kevin Feige, she will be the most powerful person in the MCU, the most powerful hero. So again, it'll be interesting to see where they take her character and what they do with her, and how she really plays a specific role in future movies. But yeah, I'm really excited to see how they work out how to undo what they've done at the end of Infinity War, because yeah, I'm still trying to process it now, and I saw it last week. Apart from that obvious thing of who dies in the movie, a few other moments that really stood out to me are the bit where Thor's whole arc in the film. I loved that. I think I mentioned it in my movie, that his whole thing that he gets to do in the film with Rocket and Groot, I really liked that. The bit with Giant Peter Dinklage, though, did kind of throw me off for a minute, because I'm so used to seeing Peter Dinklage as a small person, but then you see him superimposed as a huge dwarf, and it just doesn't look right. I get what they're going for, but every time I see his character on screen, I'm just like, no, that just looks like, someone grabbed an image of Peter Dinklage and just enlarged the image. It doesn't look any different. It just looks like a big Peter Dinklage. It doesn't look like a giant, if you get what I mean. But yeah, that's a noteworthy thing. The fact that Hulk doesn't come out at all in the movie, except for that first 5 minutes. And I like to think of it, because I saw a few theories saying that Thanos beat him up so bad that it scared the Hulk from ever coming out again. And I like that, seeing that as a possible theory, because it's probably the most plausible one out of all of them. So yeah, I really like that. And again, going back to Thor, the way he enters that final battle in Wakanda, I thought was really good. And one thing I am going to say, which I didn't mention in my spoiler-free review, but I thought I'll mention here, is that I actually kind of liked the Black Order. I know a lot of people don't seem to be liking them because of the fact they're very one-dimensional, but I thought they were pretty good for what they were there for. The only reason they're there is so that they can kind of, soften the heroes before Thanos comes in and then properly ends them. And seeing that is their purpose, I thought they did their purpose pretty damn well. And my favourite out of all of them, who probably gets the most screen time out of all 4 of them, is Ebony Maw. Because again, even though he's pretty one-dimensional, he just has this pretty unsettling and kind of threatening presence whenever he's on screen, that is. And the way he just, his presence and his voice and the way he just presents himself is really, really effective. And I do think he is the better of the 4 people in the Black Order. To be honest, I can't even remember the names of the other 3. I know one of them's called Corvus Cortex or something. I can't quite remember. But the other three were good. They just didn't have that much else to do. But I thought Ebony Maw was the more intriguing of the four of them. Because one, he gets more screen time, and two, you know, he's a little bit more threatening. So yeah, that's about all I can really say about Infinity War at the moment. If you want to talk more about this in the comments below, then go ahead. I will happily have a discussion with you guys in the comments about this. If you enjoyed the video, then give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And yeah, I will see you in the next one. Bye.